When I was just starting out in business in like my first 2 or 3 years, I was introduced to this book and it ended up having a tremendous impact on me. And I would read it as a habit every single year. I'd read it at the start of the season. And that book was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So this book is a highly recommended book, and I would actually say a mandatory book for you to be reading. I would take the time right now while you're watching this to order it on Amazon. There's a link in the PDF document that is attached. You can download the PDF document, which describes some of the key points from this book, which I'm going to go over right now. So the book has obviously 7 very important habits. We're not going to cover them all right now, but the 2 that I want to discuss and the 3 concepts that I want to discuss are as follows. The first of which is proactivity. So habit number 1 is to be proactive in life. And there's a methodology to this and a way of looking at things. So we're going to cover that. The second is, and this is part of proactivity, the chapter on proactivity, which is to put your attention and your thoughts on things that are within your circle of concern and within your circle of influence. So I'll take a moment to describe those as well. And the third thing that I want to cover has to do with priority management. And there's a quadrant system, 4 quadrants, and there's a way of thinking about things and looking about things when you plan your activities on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, and year-to-year basis. We want to be operating in a certain quadrant and not reacting to things that are arising in our business. So I want to start with proactivity, and the opposite to proactivity would be reactivity. We want to be proactive in our business lives and in our personal lives. So to break it down, there's 2 basic ways of being in business and life. How I would define proactivity, some of the qualities would be having defined goals in place in your days, in your weeks, in your months, in your year. Taking the time every week to schedule a clear plan towards your goals. So every week on Sundays is when I plan out my schedule and I audit my schedule. Having tangible outcomes for every day and every week. So certain things that you wish to achieve on every single day of the week that you're planning on working. Having reviewing results at the end of every week during the coaching session, which is called the GSNR coaching method. Every month, every quarter, we want to be looking at the goals we set, what results were achieved, and then auditing that and understanding why we achieved the results or what needs to change. This is all proactive attitude, proactive language. Reactive ways of looking at things or speaking would be working without firm direction, doing what seems the most urgent, just going and doing stuff, moving along without a focused review on your results that you've achieved or the goals that you've set. So not reviewing what has happened. Making mistakes without changing anything. So making a mistake and then not consciously implementing new methods to make sure that mistake doesn't happen again. This is all a reactive way of being in business, right? When something arises, you want to learn from that and you want to position things so it doesn't happen again, right? That's the whole benefit of mistakes, is that we learn. It's an investment that we can learn from. So, the way it shows up, all this stuff, is often in our language. You can hear it in how somebody speaks in life. When I'm doing interviews with people, I'm listening for proactive language versus reactive language. So you can really notice it within yourself. Proactive language looks like stuff like, I'll try something else. I control how I feel about this. I'll decide how I want to respond. I will get it done. I'll do it anyways. So that's all very assertive, proactive language. So a reactive language would be something like, oh, there's nothing I can do about that. That's just the way that it is, or that's just the way that I am. He's making me mad, or they are making me frustrated. Someone else is making me feel what I feel, right? I'm not taking responsibility for my emotions. I can't. They won't let me. I'll have to do that. If this, then that. So it's very much like conditional upon this thing, then I can do this, right? Or, say you're going to go marketing for the evening, and your language is, if it's not raining, then I'll go marketing. So you're not just going to go marketing and get results regardless of the external situation. Note that there's some examples of reactive versus proactive language. The next kind of concept I want to review and bring to your conscious awareness is the idea of the circle of influence and the circle of concern. So again, you can notice this in how people speak in the world. You can notice this in how friend groups, colleagues, how they talk about and what they talk about. A lot of people, the first circle that I want to talk about is the circle of concern. And concern of what is the big question. We want to speak in life about things that concern our purpose or our mission or what we're trying to achieve. When we spend time watching the news or gossiping or speaking about things that have no relevance to our actual established mission or purpose or personal mission statement, these are things that are not part of what's important to talk about. They're outside of the circle of concern. Furthermore, within the circle of concern, there is also a circle of influence. So something could concern me, but if I have no influence about it, then it also has less importance for me to be talking about it. And the reason so is that it's gonna dictate my ability to speak proactively about something. So perhaps in business, my circle of concern, it might be interest rates are rising, which is a pretty big macro event that's going on. But my circle of influence around interest rates is limited. There's nothing really I can do about it. It's just something that affects my business, but ultimately it affects everyone. It's not something that is worth a lot of discussion. Interest rates just go up and down in business. It's something to be aware of. But we don't want to obsess about it and reactive language would just be like, oh, this sucks. This is terrible. There's nothing we can do about that. Like that kind of language is not useful. And so the PDF document, I recommend you read it, and it kind of outlines the circle of concern and the circle of influence a little bit more in detail. But the way I've defined it is the circle of concern. These are things in life and business that we may or may not be able to influence or do anything about. The circle of influence are things that we can influence in life and business within our circle of concern. The circle can be expanded with focus and proactivity. So we can actually expand these circles as we grow as business people and as leaders. Continue on reading from the PDF. It says, there are things we can do something about and there are things that we cannot. Proactivity deals only with the things that lie within our circle of influence. Proactive focus expands the circle of influence as we place attention on it. Reactive focus puts contraction pressure on the circle of influence. It shrinks it. So some of the action items that are perhaps useful right at this point would be to start to think about and watch the thoughts that you have in all the things that you do, in how you go around in your day. Start bringing conscious awareness to how you think about things and what thoughts arise. Are they reactive or proactive? Another action item would be to start paying attention to the language that you're using in your life and in business. Does your language depend on the category of life that you're in? Maybe you talk more proactively in certain categories of your life, relationships, health. Maybe in your fitness practice, you have more proactive language. And then maybe in your business, you have more reactive language. Ultimately, we want to bring proactive language to all the areas of our life. Another action item would be identify an area in your business that has a problem right now. And are you speaking from a place of proactivity or reactivity about it? The next area that I would like to speak about has to do with the quadrants when it comes to the third chapter in the book, which is called Put First Things First, which has to do with priority and time management. So the quadrant system is a way of classifying the different activities that you take on in your day-to-day and week-to-week life. And we want to be working from a specific quadrant. So the quadrants are actually broken down by 2 categories, which is important activities and not important activities. And then we have urgent activities and not urgent activities. So the most proactive quadrant to be operating from is important but not urgent. And this is where you can really put time aside to critically think about things, make strategic plans, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to take this time to talk about these quadrants and give a little bit of a breakdown of each of them. And then you can start to classify for yourself how you operate in your personal life, in your career life. And, the first step is bringing awareness to this stuff. So quadrant 1, it deals with significant results that are important and urgent. So sometimes there's things that are urgent and they're important. So we all have quadrant 1 activities. For many, though, quadrant 1 consumes them. So as long as you focus on quadrant 1, it will keep you getting bigger and bigger until it dominates you. Some people are so worn out by quadrant 1 at the end of the day that they only have relief at the end where they can fall into unimportant, non-urgent activities. These are time-wasting activities, basically. Quadrant 2, this is the heart of effective personal management. So this is where we deal with building a life and building a business. In here, you're working on things that are important, but they're not urgent. This is where we do our best work. In quadrant 2, we deal with vision, making important hires, writing the mission statement of a company, long-range planning, building systems, etc., filming a video program, right? These are all quadrant 2 things. So vision, balance, planning, control, people development, crisis control, systems, system development in general, just to recap some of that. The third quadrant deals with urgent and not important. So that doesn't sound very good. Urgent and not important activities. This is pure reaction state of being on a daily basis. So people who spend time only in the quadrant 3 and 4 would be living unplanned, unorganized lives centered around nothing, basically. These are dependent, reactive people who have not yet claimed responsibility for their lives. Effective people who live lives of integrity with higher values and greater purpose cannot be found in quadrant 3 or 4, which we're going to get to, because they're not important. So that says it all, though. Whether it's urgent or not urgent, if it's not important, it doesn't need any attention, especially until all the important things in our lives have been dealt with. Things in quadrant 3 would be short-term focus things, crisis management. You see goals and plans as kind of worthless, and you actually actively choose not to have plans in life all the time. If you feel like a victim, often things are kind of out of your control. Like you don't have much control over anything. Everything feels like it's not in your locus of control. A lot of broken relationships stem out of this quadrant, and that's not where we want to live from, and that is absolutely not where we're going to be able to build healthy businesses from. So the final quadrant is quadrant 4. And quadrant 4, you are totally wasting your time. You have no mission or clarity on your values or your purpose, and you lack discipline of mind. Anything that pops up in a news feed, you will consider looking at, even if it's mentioning it. And you'll even tell other people about random things that have popped up in your news feed. So this is typically a lot of scrolling on social media, random YouTube channels, and just like talking about whatever random thing came up in your just random, whatever just presents itself and you allow into your mindset, and then you regurgitate it. This is someone who really doesn't know what's going on tomorrow. They have no plan for the next day. They don't really have a calendar of any kind. And, the results from this category is typically things like you're getting fired from jobs, totally irresponsible, a lot of time wasted on Facebook, watching what other people are doing all the time to see what everyone else is doing, depending on others for everything. So that's kind of a real overview of the quadrants. And have a close, detailed look at the actual PDF, which is what I'm reading from here, and give you some perspective. But we want to be operating from quadrant 2 as we get more established into the business. And once we start to have a greater overview of the fundamentals of our franchises, we can start to take a step back and actually plan and start to put in the key roles and the key hires like sales managers, production managers, estimators, marketing teams, and we can focus more and more on the higher level impact and leadership. So action items. You can start to ask yourself, if you haven't started your business yet, then, you can still obviously do this work. But if you do have, you're already operating in your business, ask yourself, what one thing could you start doing now that if you did on a regular basis would make a huge positive difference in your life and your business? Another action item, what one thing could you stop doing right now that if you did that on a regular basis would make a huge difference in your life and your business? Another action item, are you working, well, this is just a question to ask yourself. Do you find that you are working on your business or in your business? So when we find ourselves doing tasks in the business that employees or someone else's job, we are definitely working in our business. Or if we are filling some other role in the company, like if I'm painting houses, I'm definitely working in my business. That's a whole role that I could be hiring out. And rather than developing new roles for the company and new systems, I'm acting as one of the employees of the company and doing somebody else's job. That would be working in my business, not on my business. So those are some of the things you could start asking yourself. People who are working on their business are in quadrant 2, development, systems development, leadership development, that kind of stuff. So that is basically it for this training. I'm going to have you watch a really old school video. It's probably from like the 1990s of Stephen Covey teaching the third habit, which is to put first things first, where he talks about putting the big rocks first. So have a watch of that right now. And in terms of me, I will see you in the next training.